So you made it out of Belmarsh alive today?
Been up all night. I've not slept a wink.
Tiring work.
Absolutely, but those boys deserve it. They're veterans, aren't they?
What punishment?
Turns out I don't know what Belmarsh is. I think they're like Chelsea pensioners.
Ava Santina, Capital J journalist.
Hi.
How are you?
Great. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Oh, I brought Ed's lunch.
Sorry?
I want to just give that to him.
Is this I think this is the episode you decided to prank me. For audio listeners, they've given me an egg and cress sandwich. Which...
Will you have a bite?
I guess, otherwise it's a fucking waste of food.
Eat the
How long have
sandwich.
you...
The look in your eyes.
When did you decide to do this?
Sean and I earlier, when we were on the hunt for birthday cakes for Laura, because it's her birthday,
Oh, happy birthday, Laura.
Happy birthday, Laura.
we saw the egg sandwich and we thought, you know what? Let's buy that.
We're having to eat it.
Yeah, at least one bite.
It looks...
What are you tasting? What can you...
egg and cress.
For listeners and not viewers, there is a nice piece of cress hanging from...
Are we going to tell him? I was about to say, are we going to tell him about that? Or are we going to go through the whole episode?
It's not nice.
No?
We're horrible.
Well, if you could not waste that, please.
You have to gan it here.
Oh, you're going for the one he bit out of too, yeah? No.
We share.
No.
So Ollie and I eat lunch every day.
Two-toke path.
Like, you know how at weddings you go like this with the champagne and you...
Yep.
Or the cake or whatever.
We eat it like Lady and the Tramp.
No, because I'm not going to eat more. Otherwise, yeah, I would be. That was a big plate of spaghetti and meatballs.
Well, that's what you had last night at Belmarsh, right?
Not spaghetti.
No.
Ed Campbell, the filth. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I like the filth as a nickname.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good. Like I'm a villain.
Yours has obviously been Golden Boy, then Dragon Boy,
Yep.
now the filth.
Quite like the filth. I like
I like the filth. I think I'll stick with that.
It's like a rogues gallery. I'm into it.
I haven't had one yet.
You're a Capital
I
J
don't know.
journalist, bro.
Yeah, but, you know. Be nice to have something else.
Steering away from the mic. That's probably horrible.
What would you like to be?
Well, I don't know. I think that it's not something you ask for. It's something you're given.
No, I actually, to be fair, I did not ask for any of the nicknames.
That's what I mean. You're
Yeah,
given
yeah.
it, you know?
The problem is, like, if you ask for a nickname, you guarantee that you will never be called it.
No.
Like, if you were in school and you're like, I don't know,
Call me Razor.
you can call me Dragon.
Yeah.
People will be like, yeah, fucking as if.
There was someone I met who introduced himself as Tarzan. He was like, my friends call me Tarzan. And
Why?
no one had ever, he just wanted to be called Tarzan. His friends had never called him Tarzan. Ever. He just
Sorry.
made it up. He just decided he's going to be Tarzan from now on.
Do you know how it's like? Did you see that thing going around the other day that was like, sorry, it's really gross. It was like, do you think that the first, was Jane the first thing that Tarzan shagged? Or like, was he a virgin already been practicing? Like,
What's his wee gorilla friend called?
I don't know.
film.
What is his?
I don't know.
Doesn't he hang out with like an orangutan or something?
He's raised by the gorillas, isn't it?
No,
That's
in the film, he's got like a wee Turk, I think is its name.
Turk, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we're talking about the Disney classic here, aren't we? We're not talking about the quite brutal Tarzan.
What one was that?
The original, it's you know, Disney softened everything. The original, let me see who it's written by, but it's harrowing. I remember reading it at university and going, oh, that's not family friendly. Like, Edgar Rice Burroughs.
I didn't know that.
Oh no, he's like mental in that. It's like it's kind of like what's the other thing about the Nile? Why have I forgotten it?
Heart of Darkness.
It's like Heart of Darkness. It's like
Tarzan.
it's a proper dark story.
Really?
I suppose boy raised by gorillas, he wouldn't be a well-adjusted man.
Well,
And you
no.
introduce him to polite London society.
Yeah.
You're asking for trouble.
How much have thought about that?
Oh, no.
But if you were raised by gorillas, how comes like someone called Jane turns up and you go, "Well, that's what I meant to sleep with"? Like, you know, you haven't slept with anything before that. What I'm
Yeah, how
saying
do you
is
know?
exactly.
When you know, you know.
Yeah. But then also,
This is quite peppery.
yeah, I wonder if that's the bread. That's what my sentiment was.
Good though.
I actually disagree. I didn't enjoy it.
We had a bit of a falling out at the checkouts because I'd scanned my club card before Sean could scan his.
Should we do a PMQs clip?
No. Yes.
That's the end of the podcast.
Yeah, okay, let's.
Roll the clip.
Last night, the Foreign Secretary said the UK will work with our allies to find out what has happened. I know this only happened last night, but can the Prime Minister please tell us when he thinks he might be able to update the House on progress with that work?
I know the whole House will have been shocked by the scenes at Al Ali Hospital. Any loss of innocent life is a dreadful tragedy. And everyone will be thinking both of those who have lost their lives and the families that they leave behind. We should not rush to judgment before we have all the facts on this awful situation. Every member will know that the words we say here have an impact beyond this House. This morning, I met with the National Security Advisor, but also the chair of the Joint Intelligence Committee. I could tell the Honourable Gentleman our intelligence services have been rapidly analysing the evidence to independently establish the facts. We are not in a position at this point to say more than that, but I can tell him we are working at pace, but also cooperating and collaborating with our allies on this issue as we look to get to the bottom of the situation, and we will also continue all our efforts to get humanitarian aid into the region.
That's Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak going back and forth over Israel-Palestine. Mm-hmm. Very similar tone to the statement yesterday. Mm-hmm. No, statement on Monday. No, statement yesterday. When was the statement?
Monday.
Run me through it.
I mean, even more so, but the big conversation today is obviously the bombing of the hospital that took place yesterday. Estimates say about 500 people were killed. There is, as we talked about on Monday, social media is a sewer, and there's a lot of speculation going on. And actually all politicians in the House were, apart from Crispin Blunt, who we'll come to later, but we're trying to avoid any blame or attribution. They're basically... I don't think we'll ever know who actually did it. Right? I've gone off on a complete tangent, but I don't think we will ever find out.
The thing with the hospital, right, is late last night, everyone starts going around saying that the IDF has bombed this hospital. Mm-hmm. As more information comes to light, the IDF denies it. Someone who advises Netanyahu initially tweets claiming responsibility for it, then deletes the tweet. A host of political characters, including Jeremy Corbyn, tweet condemning the IDF strike. Then, over the course of the evening, open source journalists, people like Bellingcat and other independent people, start geolocating an attempted missile fire from Gaza into Israel. The IDF say, the IAF, also the Air Force, say that the explosion at the hospital was caused by either a misfired rocket that doesn't make it all the way into Israel or an intercepted rocket that then lands on the hospital. It is still, at the time of recording, it's still not been confirmed who is responsible for what. Mm-hmm. Not least because in previous instances, the IDF has bombed hospitals. In previous instances, the IDF has lied about things it's done. So the most recent example would be Shireen Abu Akleh, the Palestinian journalist who was shot dead. They initially denied any involvement in that. And then as more and more information came to light, they eventually quietly admitted that they were culpable, which means that people are skeptical of the IDF's denials. As a result of this, we've lost now, I think, Biden's bilats with both the Jordanians, the Palestinians have been cancelled, and there's growing pressure on him in relation to his meeting with Netanyahu.
There's an issue with Egypt as well, isn't it? Because the whole point that Biden was going over there was to make sure that the Rafah crossing was open and make sure that humanitarian aid was getting in, and now that's all in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this was the talking point, right?
Yeah, it's the only talking point, really.
Lammy followed PMQs, didn't he, with a statement on this as well?
He did. He got it wrong to start with. He said that the bombing of a mosque, he had to be corrected twice.
He called it that twice, didn't he? Yeah.
He did call it that twice. But I mean, just, possibly a slip of the tongue.
It's a pretty high pressure situation, isn't it?
Yeah. And what he was asking James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, was when the government when British intelligence knows who actually committed the act or who was responsible, that they would tell them. Because it's not clear whether they will pass that on, pass that information on. And obviously that's, it's had. I mean, there was an IDF representative being interviewed this morning on the Today programme, and they were furious at apparently the British media have just believed what Hamas have said, and they were furious about that. Obviously, the other side to that is that when the IDF give out information, they expect everyone to believe it immediately. So you're stuck in between.
This is exactly, and this is the continuation of the stuff we were talking about on the last episode, right? Which is, it's impossible for anyone to take a nuanced or even actually possibly humanitarian position in this, right? Because either the IDF committed a war crime and bombed a hospital, or they didn't, and Hamas is responsible. Islamic Jihad in this case, isn't it? Is the group involved? Is this who's accused of firing the rocket? Have blown up a hospital, and it should be possible for you to say, regardless of who's been involved, the bombing of the hospital is a bad thing. But yet again, people project their political position in relation to the conflict onto this piece of news before anyone actually knows what's happened, who's responsible, or why.
Mm-hmm. Can I also just quickly add, in the interest of nuance, that I'm not saying that Hamas and the IDF are the same thing, because there will definitely be someone who will say that I'm suggesting that. That's not. Those are the two big voices that we are looking at. That's where we're getting a lot of information from, aside from citizen journalists or actual journalists who are there. I'm just saying those are two big mouthpieces. I'm not comparing them.
Yeah.
It's also as well people having to. I feel we can only talk about social media with any authority.
Yeah.
Which does feel slightly stunted, but it's what our expertise is in this situation. But people were having to roll back or update their analysis within hours.
Yeah.
I think having an immediate take on that, I think it's, given what we know about modern warfare and disinformation, trying to have an immediate take in response to news like that, not as an expert, is just, I think everyone needs to slow down. That was
You don't need to have a take on everything, right? War is chaos.
Yeah.
And any number of things could happen. Yeah, totally.
Sunak actually came off quite statesmanlike during this, because there was chatter that he might stand up and start asking Keir Starmer why certain Labour politicians were present at the pro-Palestine march that was on Saturday. Thought it could be quick, dirty jibes, and actually he sounded very statesmanlike. It was this is a real concern, and he was basically calming the MPs who were in the benches to say, could you please not jump on this? Could you please not make assumptions, because the world is listening and we could create some kind of, a second wave of conflict, essentially.
Yeah, they struck a very their tone was one of unity, wasn't it, really, an agreement between the two of them. I think the interesting thing for me is the softening of language again from Keir Starmer in relation to this. I know we've briefly discussed this already, but first remarks from him in relation to this are Israel has a right to defend herself, and must follow, and then also must follow international law. To now saying there is a need for humanitarian corridors so that food, medicine, and water can enter Gaza. And there's an important backdrop to this, isn't there? Which is that I think double digits now, possibly, might not be that high. So word of warning, because I'm doing this off the top of my head. Labour councillors have now resigned over the Labour Party's position in relation to this. There were crisis talks yesterday involving, at the very least, David Lammy and I think other senior figures in the party to try and cool the walk back over it. Keir Starmer sent out an email to Labour Party members as well, explicitly outlining what his position was in it. There is an internal party political row brewing in the Labour Party over this, which he is having to be very conscious of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that... No.
Cool. Shall we listen to a little bit of Stephen Flynn?
Yep.
Stephen Flynn, roll the clip.
We fully support the defeat of Hamas and, of course, the safe return of all hostages who have been taken. So too, I hope, do we all share the same common humanity of protecting civilians and condemning any acts of collective punishment against the Palestinian people. In that regard, many of the images emanating from Gaza in recent days will shock us all to the core. So can I ask the Prime Minister, will he join with us on these benches and call for an immediate ceasefire in the region?
Mr. Speaker, we believe that Israel does have a right to defend itself, to protect its people, and to act against terrorism and ensure that the awful attack that we've seen from Hamas cannot happen again. And unlike Hamas, the Israelis, including the President, have made it clear that their armed forces will operate in accordance with international law. And we will continue to urge the Israelis to take every precaution to avoid harming civilians.
Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, my ask for a ceasefire is done with all sincerity to protect civilians, but also to ensure that we have the safe creation of humanitarian corridors. Humanitarian corridors which will allow for food, for water and for vital medicines to get into Gaza, but also for innocent civilians caught up in this terrible conflict to flee. In respect of those who wish to flee, can I ask the Prime Minister what early consideration, if any, his government has given to the creation of a refugee resettlement scheme akin to that previously put in place for Syrian nationals, Afghani nationals, and of course, Ukrainian nationals?
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud that we are already one of the most significant contributors to the United Nations efforts to support Palestinian refugees, and our funding supports around 5.8 million refugees annually. And on Monday we announced a significant increase in our funding of aid to the region, including to the UN to support refugees. With regard to humanitarian aid, as I said before, we are already working through preemptively moving aid and relief teams into the region, but critically the most important thing is to open up access for that aid to get into Gaza, which is why our conversations with the Egyptians and others are so critical. We continue to work closely with allies to find every way to get that aid to the people who need it as quickly as possible.
Ava, so Stephen Flynn there calling for a ceasefire, striking again a sort of more... Well, actually, no, I think it's unfair to say that he's striking a more sort of humanitarian tone than the others, because I think it's unfair to ascribe that to Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer. But nonetheless, calling for a ceasefire. What did you make of his remarks there?
Yeah, well, I think, also he is representing, or he's part of the party, which, Humza Yousaf is the first minister, and Humza Yousaf has relatives over in Gaza at the moment. I mean, it's a perspective that not many MPs can actually give, right? They can't give that proper insider perspective. There were groans actually there were quiet groans after he called for a ceasefire, quite mocking, as if it was like the most ridiculous thing you could possibly suggest. I suppose it does feel like it's a bit far off, right? Because it feels like you're in the belly of the conflict, and it feels like you're dealing with the humanitarian crisis at the moment rather than actually talking about a ceasefire. Sunak came back with, we do believe that Israel has the right to defend herself. And he came back a second time. He was like, yeah, that's fine, cool. Can you get people out? And then he started asking about refugees, because that's really interesting, because the moment that we started to, Russia invaded Ukraine, or, Afghanistan everyone had to get out of Afghanistan when Dominic Raab was on the beach. We started talking about refugees and a plan of action. And it doesn't seem that there's anything on the table or any discussion about where you might offer safe passage to people in either, Israel or Palestine. Are we going to take people in?
Do you think it would be controversial or unpopular if they were to create a scheme like the Afghanistan thing or the Ukraine thing?
I think that you would have quite ugly rhetoric that similar to what you're hearing on the Rafah crossing about Egypt not wanting to take in people from Gaza because you don't know who you're taking in. I think you'll have quite ugly rhetoric in this country about that as well. Yeah,
it's tough, isn't it? I mean, there's the broader problem that's existed for a long time in the region, which is that a lot of Israel's neighbours also aren't prepared to accept any more Palestinian refugees than they already have done. I think I don't think that the British population will be particularly keen to accommodate, to just be blunt about it, brown people. I know the Afghans are obviously not white, but there is a feeling, isn't there, sort of among the broad population about people that assisted our military and fought with us in the conflict, that we should take care of them. Obviously, there's not a corollary there with the Palestinians. And to your point as well about, I don't think anyone about Israel defending herself. I don't think anyone would dispute, right, that Israel has a right to defend herself. The thing that Flynn is hitting on here is that there are 2 million people sandwiched into a tiny strip of land that's now being bombed. Half of them are children. No one's disputing. It's almost a like a get out of jail free, isn't it, to say Israel has a right to defend herself, because it's like, well, yeah, every nation has a right to defend itself, but that's not really the thing that's being contested here, is it? The thing that's being contested is the bombing of a densely populated area that's very, very densely populated with civilians.
Yeah.
Cool. Should we move on?
Yep.
Let's listen to Crispin Blunt, MP. Roll the clip.
My right honourable friend, I understand, will be travelling to the region, and he will see for himself the shock and trauma that is through the Israeli nation after this event. And that is shock and trauma that is also accompanied by a rage. And the enormous danger is that the Israeli reaction, led by a Prime Minister who will be held accountable for this failure of intelligence, is indeed amounting to a war crime, and that will not only be a crime, it will be a mistake. And I urge my right honourable friend, there is now no one better placed to urge restraint upon Israel to stay within the international rule of law and exercise restraint on behalf of us all.
Mr. Speaker, as a friend, we will always urge Israel to take every possible practical precaution to avoid harming civilians, and indeed to act within international law, as their president has said that their armed forces will do, whilst recognising the incredible complexity and difficulty of the situation on the ground. And it does bear repeating, Hamas is a terrorist organisation that embeds themselves inside of civilian populations. It is something we always have to remember, and Israel is taking every practical possible step to avoid harming civilians, and we will do everything we can to provide humanitarian support to the area.
Ava, Crispin Blunt on his feet there, striking a slightly more critical tone.
Yeah.
In relation to the Prime Minister. What did you make of it?
Well, Crispin Blunt has been criticised by all sides of the party, actually, in the last couple of days, because this is something he said right from way back last week, when we were saying, Israel has a right to defend herself, and we weren't talking about Palestine. He was like, hello, can't be acting like that. He's talking about international war crimes. I mean, that conversation is now one I believe is starting to happen in the Conservative Party. It's certainly happening in the Labour Party. That was the big concern that all of the councillors had, and why they were threatening to resign. But when he started with this last week, people calling for him to have the whip removed, which is extraordinary.
Yeah, it's just it's brain rot of the highest order, isn't it? It's like, you see this issue differently. I swear there was a time in party politics where it was accepted or normalised that it was possible for people of the same political party to see issues differently, and that those things could coexist in the same space. And it's a sign of the sort of paucity of our democracy now that someone who, in fairness to him, I don't think actually particularly deviates from the Conservative Party line. He is just adopting the slightly, what I would have been a non-controversial opinion of saying we should oppose war crimes. Which was getting a Conservative politician on the media round over the last, certainly at the beginning of the conflict, to in any way sort of condemn collective punishment, i.e. the siege of Gaza, was incredibly, incredibly difficult.
I wonder if this speaks to the Conservatives' attitude towards everything is a culture war. That at the moment they're not highlighting division with the Labour Party, and they're not using this as a stick to beat the Labour Party with, but they might at some point in the future. And if you don't have all your MPs singing from the same hymn sheet, prepared to attack the Labour Party for being soft on Hamas, which was probably the line that they would take, that would really undermine their chances. So I wonder if it's like preemptive criticism, like get in line so we can use this.
That's really interesting.
I've got a mouthful of egg and press. Sorry, I'm going to segue to the next.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's roll the next clip.
Speaking of the culture war, let's play the next clip.
On Sunday, Terence Carney, a 70-year-old Hartlepoolian, was murdered by an asylum seeker. The people are afraid and angry. Every week, my office is besieged by asylum seekers. My staff are intimidated by young men. The fact is, most of them are illegal migrants who should be expelled. My thoughts and sympathies are with Mr. Carney's family and friends, and all my constituents affected by this heinous crime. However, sympathy is not enough. They deserve action, and I am demanding it. Will the Prime Minister take action? Will he make sure enforcement is delivered? Will he ensure that people who have no right to be here are expelled? Enough is enough. I want these people out of Hartlepool now.
Mr. Speaker, as my honourable friend knows, I'm unable to comment on cases which are currently before the court, but can I join her in expressing my sympathies to families affected? And I would like to reassure her that this government is doing everything we can to tackle illegal migration and the harm it causes by removing those with no right to be here in the UK. We have excellent, long-standing relationships to return people to many countries. We are returning thousands of people more this year than we have done in the past, and we will continue to use every avenue at our disposal to ensure that it is only this country and this government who decides who come here and not criminal gangs.
My.
Yeah.
My.
horrible.
That actually brought gasps in the office, didn't it?
Yeah, and as a comment.
Yeah, it did actually, didn't it?
Yeah.
Not that we weren't gasping at the rest of it. We were a bit silent for the other. for the first 20 minutes, we were silent. And then Jill Mortimer stands up and just declares war on asylum seekers.
I've got to be honest, this is like the most entry level, like fucking key stage 1 racism, right?
Yeah.
Like, an asylum seeker killed someone in my constituency. Jill, I'm going to fucking tell you something. That might probably be the least relevant thing about what's going on. Now, I obviously have absolutely no idea about the context of the crime. I have no idea about what unfortunately has happened to Terence Carney, 77-year-old bloke. Horrible, horrible story. Someone's died. Why is it relevant? And then to use that to stoke up this fear, to then go from there and say people are afraid and angry. Are they? Are they? I'm sure people are angry about any murder that happens in the constituency, but to link those two things together is politically very, very dangerous. Very dangerous.
And I think actually people are afraid of asylum seekers because of things like this, as in because of sentiment like this, rhetoric like this. Mm-hmm. If everything you're being told about asylum seekers and refugees is negative, if they're all military-age men, we were talking about this today. I was in Tamworth yesterday ahead of tomorrow's by-election, and not for the first time, people have expressed concern to me about military-age men coming to the country. And if that's all the rhetoric you're getting, if that's all you're being told about asylum seekers, you're not being told about where they're fleeing from, why they come to this country. Like, you're not being told about the responsibility and duty Britain has to refugees, to asylum seekers, the history of it. If all you're hearing is fear, it just stokes. It's just baiting. It's just stoking division and hatred of these people, which is really bloody dangerous. Mm.
Well, to bring it down to in silly little politics, Hartlepool is where Reform are canvassing heavily. It's a seat that Reform actually think they might be able to take.
Really?
Yep.
Richard Tice has stood there before.
Yeah.
Richard Tice has been the candidate there before.
Yep.
Is he still the candidate there?
He is. I'm trying to think whether I should save it for the next thing we do. But, no, he's right. They've been up there campaigning. They're polling on. I think they're polling on 7 points for tomorrow, aren't they? But they were reaching about 11 points a few months ago in that constituency, which is actually pretty good for where they first started and also what that could do to slice the Conservative vote. And obviously they campaign, their big push is anti-migration, it's we're going to stop the boats, and it's been ridiculing the Conservatives for not quote unquote being able to get the migration under control, right? So I actually think this is petty party politics. I think she stood up in the House of Commons today. She hasn't spoken since June, but today she's up on her feet and she's really, really concerned about the scary men that are apparently in her constituency. No way. She wanted her own clip. She wanted a clip to show to the constituents to say, I'm tackling migration.
I just wonder if you're fed up, if your thought would be, I'll go to this new party that I've never heard of before. As in, UKIP, as a machine, didn't get a single elected MP. Why is, and that was like a household name. I just don't think Reform would be able to take a seat in a first past the post system in a Labour surge, in a former Labour seat. I really don't think that they'd be able to do that, regardless of like the division that they're stoking.
No, but they could slice the Conservative vote.
Yes, but
which is a concern.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but I just don't think they'd be able to take it.
And especially in a seat that is now, you go, honestly, the big conversation there is migration, which is crazy because it's nowhere near Dover.
It's really far.
Yeah. You all right?
Yeah, just making my way through this egg and cress. Sorry.
I don't know. I don't even know if Ollie actually enjoyed that egg and cress sandwich or whether he felt obligated to eat it.
It wasn't bad, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you give it texture-wise?
Well, it's like eating paper mache, isn't it? It's like pap.
Right.
It's not great.
Flavour?
It's not as bad as he makes out. I'll tell you that. I'll myth bust that.
People like different things.
Not true. Everyone likes what I like, and people that don't are wrong. Yeah, I was just going to say, Ava, you prefaced your remarks about that by saying, I know it's silly little politics, but I don't think it is talking about reform. I think you're absolutely bang on the money. I think this seems to me to be a reaction to that electoral threat that she's facing, and the fact that she's willing to whip up division and hatred in this manner over essentially retaining power is utterly embarrassing. And I hope the good people of Hartlepool recognise that at the next general election.
Do you think Reform will be an electoral force?
I think it depends. I think that MRP polling we were looking at a few months ago suggested that it really had the potential to slice quite a lot of the Conservative vote. It's not about whether they can win seats. It's that it threatens. There was something like a margin of 150 seats that the Tories could lose if they were to stand, just because the hardline Tory voters will go to them.
It's absolutely crucial to understand the 2019 general election result in the context of the Brexit Party only standing in Labour seats. Really, really important. Because if Reform, which is the successor, right, to the Brexit Party, now stands across Tory and Labour seats, they will sap votes from the Conservatives, right? In fact, actually probably more likely than they are from the Labour Party. But you can't understand the 2019 general election result without the Brexit dynamics in play, i.e. the Labour Party's adoption of a second referendum, not least because of some of Keir Starmer's behaviour at the party conferences beforehand as the shadow Brexit secretary, but that's a story for another day. The Brexit dynamics in places like the Red Wall, Labour adopting that second referendum position, and then the Brexit Party also standing in those constituencies. So a lot of those pro-Brexit Labour voters leaving the Labour Party and still, again, not necessarily voting for the Conservatives, because there's a huge number of people in those places that will never, ever, ever vote for the Conservative Party. But they have a sort of Brexity protest vote option alternative. And in a lot of these constituencies, the margins are so fine that the instance of, let's say 100 votes going over to a party like Brexit swings the seat to the Tories. If the same thing now happens to the Tories in, let's say, I don't know, pick a constituency, it doesn't matter, over things like immigration, not only does it reverse the swing in the places where they were before, but actually it then puts a whole load of other Tory, what were maybe not necessarily safe seats, but pretty much strongholds with an occasional flip-flop, maybe for like a Blair 97 or something, that then become in play for the Labour Party again.
But then you don't have any of the things that the Brexit Party had in 2019, as in you don't have Brexit, you don't have the name of the Brexit party, you don't have Nigel Farage,
Yep.
Yes, you do. He's there.
but as the leader.
No, but he's there.
But
He's out campaigning with them, and he's chair,
What,
isn't he?
is he like chief executive or
Yeah,
something like that?
I think he might be
He's
chair
like
or
non-political
something.
role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't think you have the same assets as you do in 2019.
No, I could possibly buy that, but what I also, for what it's worth, don't think they'll win a seat.
Yeah.
But what I mean to say is that they have the potential to massively influence the election without winning a seat because of those sort of thin margins and the consequences for swing between, as you rightly flagged, the first past the post system and who stands to benefit from that.
And also, they're really furious at the Conservative Party, particularly Richard Tice and Nigel Farage and the aides who work with reform, because they believe that the Conservatives won in 2019 because of the Brexit Party. They believe that they, properly influenced it. And that anger, I think, is enough for them to, now when they're strategizing, they are picking Tory marginal seats to contest in. They're angry about it. And there's almost, what?
No, I'm laughing. I'm not at your point, but I'm thinking as in like, the Conservatives could be like, oh no, the Reform Party.
I think that's really naive, though, because
Is it?
as Ollie said, if you're in a seat where it's 100 votes between Conservative and Labour, and Conservatives have just got 100, marginal, then Reform can come in and can take those away from them, and Labour win by default.
I don't know. I'm just cynical of how well known Reform are. As in, I don't. It's like the Mad Men meme. Like, I feel sorry for you. I don't think about you at all. That's like I think that's might be the opinion of the Conservative Party towards the Reform Party. I'm just cynical of their potential for as a electoral force. Is my thoughts.
Fair enough. Should we call it there? We've
Yeah.
been going for long enough. Cool. Thanks very much for listening. We'll see you on the next one.